Joins us, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, a great resource. We should use them more. Philip, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Big 550 KTRS.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so first let's talk about AIM, because AIM is an interesting organization. It's a group of businesses that have come together, large and small, for a long time here to sort of pool their resources, right?
That's correct. So we work with organizations all around the region to help them in the space of their human resource management processes, recruiting, developing, and retaining their employees. So when it comes to minimum wage, this is kind of right up our alley. We do a lot of compensation work and studies for organizations to help them find the talent and retain the talent that they're looking for.
You help businesses in lots of ways, but as we've talked, employees and finding qualified employees, is it safe to say that's the number one issue for businesses here in St. Louis?
Yeah, today that is a struggle that is universal to all organizations. There's very few companies that don't have a challenge finding talent today, really for two simple reasons. You have baby boomers who are retiring at 11,000 a day. So that's over 4 million over the last several years who have exited the workforce altogether, never coming back to work again, full-time retirement, not leaving their first job and starting a second career, but fully retired. And then you have the other end of that spectrum where, unfortunately, while this is an improved rate, the high school dropout rate is around 7,000 students a day dropping out of high school. And that's improved over the years, but nevertheless, it's still a very high number, which leaves a squeeze on the talent pool that sits between the baby boomers retiring and those people who have a high school or higher level degree for employers that are looking for a very particular skill set.
So you're saying that there are more jobs than there are people?
That's correct.
And all kinds of jobs, right?
But all kinds of jobs. Whether they're manufacturing jobs or labor jobs, they're non-skilled jobs or service jobs, professional jobs, there are just more jobs than there are people.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk minimum wage, because this has been a big bone of contention. The city of St. Louis just got the go-ahead from the state to raise the minimum wage. What are you hearing from your businesses about the minimum wage here in the region?
So hearing things all over the board. And first of all, most of the organizations we work with spend a lot of time and money studying compensation, either on an annual or biannual basis. Because of this talent pool shortage that we just talked about, organizations have already moved past the minimum wage in many cases. Not all of them,
right,
but many of them have. So the impact is, if I've done a compensation study and I decided that I have to pay $11 an hour today to hire the talent that I need, to differentiate myself maybe from my competitors or from those competing companies around me, and now the minimum wage standard goes up and everyone is going to be paying $11 an hour, I'm going to have to probably differentiate myself yet again and pay more to continue to attract the type of talent that I need to run the business. So that compression starts to have a systemic impact on employers right up their chain of compensation. So 11 becomes 12 or 13, 12 and 13 becomes 14 and 15, and so on, so that you can have a wage scale and progression to differentiate yourself and run a business.
So you're saying minimum wage might bump the guy or the person from $8 to $10, but ultimately that's going to bump the person making $30,000 to $35,000, because everybody along the way gets a bump. Because how would you like to be in that meeting when, say, Sally just got here and she's making the same as me and I've been here 5 years?
That's exactly right. Or if I have to pay $2 an hour above the minimum wage level to find a particular skill, when that minimum wage level goes up, then I'm going to have to pay $2 above a new, we set the bar to a new level.
Right. What about we hear that if minimum wage is raised, they're just going to go with robots and kiosks and everything else, and raising the minimum wage is actually going to have less jobs?
That could be the case. However, I do believe that employers will do whatever they can to control their cost. Our employers in St. Louis are no different than they are in any other city where they've done these types of things.
Right.
And for those who cannot afford to move their minimum wage up, they do things like hire less people. They do things like pass along that cost to the consumer. And those types of impacts affect us in many ways. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't make it and go out of business, then there's less people. In today's market, that might not be as bad as it was in 2009 and 10, when there were more people than there was jobs. But in the balance of things, normally they're going to look for any way they can to offset those costs before they pass it on to the consumer.
Really interesting stuff. You're a great resource for a business, Philip. What do you say when you talk to a business who is a new member of AIM and they come to you and they say, look, we need help finding quality employees? Give us a couple of helpful hints you tell some of these businesses.
Well, the first thing we will look at is, what do they do that's different from their competition? And McGraw asked them this question. I asked them, what is their promise to the employee that they're looking to hire? And most employers today really struggle to answer what that means. And they'll give me answers like, well, our vision or our mission. And I said, no, I'm not looking for your vision or mission. What's your promise? If you're going to pay me $11 an hour and everyone else in town is going to pay me $11 an hour, what's the differentiating promise that you're going to make to me that I should choose to work at your place and stay there and give you a full good day's work and be engaged versus a neighboring company next door to you? And so we work on what that promise is, which really allows you to differentiate yourself from your competition.
AIM has been around how long?
It's been around for 120 years this year. Thank you very much. Yeah,
120 years, because 120 years ago, what happened?
120 years ago, we had some great leaders in St. Louis, and they came together and they were borrowing each other's resources to help each other's business, because most of the businesses at that time in St. Louis were vertically integrated, right? So their suppliers, everybody was local, all your supply base was local, and so on. So if someone had a tremendous resource like a certified engineer, it was really hard to come by 120 years ago. They were borrowing that resource to help service their client base. And finally, a few guys got really smart and said, hey, why don't we just all pitch in? We'll pay a small stipend, and we'll share those resources. And for 120 years, we've been doing that. Today, we primarily work in that space of hiring, developing, and retaining employers.
So 120 years ago, St. Louis businesses got together and said, our biggest problem is finding quality employees. And they got together, and you're telling me today, 120 years ago, that's still our number one issue.
Still number one issue.
Yeah. I don't know how many small businesses I talk to, big, medium-sized, whether they're restaurants, construction companies, or whatever else, say they are begging for qualified workers who can pass a drug test.
Pass the drug test and show up. Yeah. No, it's a tremendous challenge, and it's much, much more complicated than the minimum wage standard, but it starts with your wage scale.
Philip Brent, if somebody wants to find out more about AIM and how you can help, where do they go?
They go to aaimea.org and look us up online, and we'll be happy to help them.
AAIMEA. AIM Employers Association, AAIMEA.com.
Org.
.org.
Yep. We are not for profit.
Just Google AIM and it'll show up as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
much easier than just listening to me. Philip, thanks for coming in. Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
8:13.